Three main types of lumber. And on our bill of materials, what was one of them that we talked about?
Pine.
Okay, what type of pine was what did we say? Solid. Okay, so one of our things we had is like solid lumber. So solid lumber, and that goes like, that's kind of, we get more into like woods to dealing with different types like, you know, oak, walnut, things like that. So you have solid lumber. What's another type? Plywood. Okay. So plywood, like particle board kind of falls into that kind of manufactured lumber. Okay. So plywood or manufactured. And then the last one would be
like lattice.
like trim, right? So trim. And the big thing that separates these things is how they're sold, okay? Like if you were to buy, you guys said if you want to just take notes there or just take mental notes, whatever, you don't have to write this down anywhere specific. But lumber is sold in board feet, or solid lumber I should say, plywood is sold by square space like area, and then trim is just sold in lengths, like pipes or tubing or anything like that. Okay? And that's just, it's sold that way because those are the only ones, the only dimensions that we deal with, and we'll get more into that later. Okay? So those are the three different types of lumber. Okay. So the most common one that you guys probably thought of when you took this class was solid lumber, right? So you have your solid lumber, which comes from where?
Trees.
Trees. Perfect. Okay. So you have trees, right? You end up harvesting the trees, cut them down, you get solid lumber. What are some of the benefits of working with solid lumber? Say either compared to plywood or like with metal. What's some of the benefits, I should say?
Build.
Like
It's the most stronger.
What do you mean? You said stronger?
It's stronger, but bigger.
Okay, so pound for pound, pound for pound, it's stronger than metal. Okay, but metal is more durable. It's
And then like it's stronger than plywood.
solid lumber. Not exactly. Depends on the situation.
What are, if we had a sheet of metal versus a sheet of solid lumber, what would be a main difference that sticks out? Weight. Okay, weight. What about looks though?
Luster.
What's that? Luster? Okay, what is lustrous about? Lustrous about. Let's
Shiny.
okay, well that gets into the finish.
Mobile electronics.
Mobile. Not that I'm aware of, but
Yeah, just. I'll do chemistry.
what's that?
Yeah, just.
Statistic.
On.
Oh. Well, we have grain, right? The grain. So you have the grain pattern.
It's more flexible.
It's well,
No.
not necessarily. I mean, yeah, it's kind of one of those situations. Metal is pretty much strong whatever position it's in. Wood is really only strong in certain, basically one direction.
No, I thought you were talking about plywood.
Oh, plywood? No, we're just talking just about solid lumber. Okay?
Metal pine wood, you can see like where the weaknesses are because it cracks and changes and warps everything. While metal, it corrodes but doesn't warp or change.
Okay? Yeah, so one of the cons, or whatever you want to call it, about solid lumber is that it does have weaknesses, right? It's not manufactured. There's, knots are in there. If the tree was in a windstorm, and when it was being blown side to side, it kind of causes some weakness. So there's some stress fractures. Okay.
Now, in solid wood or whatever, solid lumber, that's to actually stain. You wouldn't stain plywood.
You can stain plywood. Like if you look at your cabinets, like your upper cabinets and your lower, your base cabinets, those actually have a stain on there.
Okay.
One of the benefits for dealing between solid lumber and plywood is that solid lumber you can go all the way, drill all the way through, right? So the grain pattern is throughout the entire thickness. Whereas when we start talking about plywood, there's a top coat or a veneer on that, okay? So it's the same grain pattern or same look throughout the entire thickness of the board, okay? All right, so that's the basics of solid lumber. What we'll do now is grab out that fraction worksheet, pass it to someone else, we'll quick grade it. Make sure your name is on it. Okay, so we have our fraction worksheet. Okay, so again,
This is what we yelled at.
Oh, good. I'll have to come up with a better system.
The cores are very sensitive.
There we go. Okay, so the first ruler we have down here, if you guys notice again those tick marks, it's all in eighths, right? So the bottom number that you should have for A through F is going to be either a 2, a 4, or an 8, right? Because we're not going to have sixteenths on there because we're not dealing with sixteenths of an inch. So when we're dealing with fractions, you're always going to have your top number is going to be what? Odd or even?
Odd.
Odd, right? So in order to have a proper fraction, you're always going to have an odd number on top. Okay, so you're always odd here, even on the bottom. Okay, in order to have a proper fraction. So again, this is going to be A through F. On the bottom number, you're either going to have a 2, a 4, or an 8, because we're not dealing with sixteenths. So, number A was what? Letter A? Yes. Thank you. Letter A?
3/8.
3/8. Okay? So they should have 3/8 there. B is 3/4. C would be 1/8, right? So we have our longest tick mark for our whole inches. Then again, we split it in half. Everything in fractions deals with half, so you always cut it in half. Okay? So we have our half, our quarter, and our eighth. So these are all eighths. D would be what?
1 and 5/8.
Inch and 5/8, right? So again, we have our half-inch mark here. So half-inch, which is the same as 4/8. We go 1 past that, right? So 4 plus 1 is 5. We have 5/8.
Why are there 2 rulers?
One's 16ths. Yeah, this
the
is-
second one for like the top questions, for D
What's
through
that?
F. For D through F, I went off the second ruler.
Oh, for the second one?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Alright. That's fine. Well, I'll look at that. We'll just go through the reading. Sorry, I'll have to change that so it's for the instructions. Okay? But for this D through F is going to be read off of this ruler. So if we were to do that, what is E? 2 1/4. Okay? F is 2 7/8, right? So we know that, again, that there's 8/8 within a whole inch. It's an 1/8 inch less than that. 8 minus 1 is 7, right? Okay, then we have 16ths, right? So this is our 16th inch ruler. So our first measurement here is half. B is 1 1/8. What is C?
1 5/8.
1 5/8. Okay, E.
2 3/16.
2 3/16, right? So we have, again, our smallest increment that we can measure in is the 1/16 of an inch. So if you look, we have 1/16, 2 3/16, right? 2 3/16. Okay. Next measurement is
2 3/4.
2 3/4. Next,
3 3/8.
3 3/8. Then we have what for
15, 16.
3 15/16. Now, did you count those all up?
Oh yeah.
No. What did you do to get that?
Just one back from 4.
Yeah, it's 1 back from 4. So again, we know that there's, if we're measuring in 1/16 of an inch, there's 16 16ths within an inch, right? If I were to count all these lines, there's 16 lines. Now, I don't have to count all 15 of them. We end up noticing that it's 1 mark away from a whole inch increment, right? So there, I know that there's 16 16ths within an inch. It's 1 back. So 1 minus, or 15 minus 16, sorry. 16 minus 1 is 15, right? So it's 3 15/16. Okay? This one here is what?
5 3/8.
3/16.
5 3/16, right? 5 3/16. So same principle again. You have your 1/4 inch mark. You know that there's 4 16ths of an inch within a 1/4. It's 1/16 back. You just subtract that. Okay? Then the last one here is 5 11/16. Does anyone have any questions on that? All right, go ahead and pass those in towards the center. Make sure your name is on that. Did I get everyone's sheet?
Hold on.
You just turn it in once. Once we have some work time, you just turn that in once. All right. Like I said, the next thing that we'll start now is reading multi-views. Okay, so this is kind of a larger stuff, and I'm not expecting you guys to have this all done at once.
or not, PI.